Right. Welcome to the Oregon Board of Education Organizational Meeting and Strategic Planning Work Session. Today is January 10th, 2022, 5:30 p.m. We have to call order a Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And thank you. Please be seated. Jane, can we have the swearing in of the board members, please?
Certainly. I'd ask that the four newly elected board members stand, please. And raise your right hand, and you can read this because I might be hard to hear with the mask on. I state your name.
I, Shay,
Do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio, and I will faithfully and impartially discharge my duties as a member in and for the Oregon Board of Education, Lucas County, Ohio, to the best of my ability and in accordance with the laws in effect and hereinafter to be enacted during my continuance in said office and until my successor is chosen and qualified.
All right, thank you very much, and I have copies that I can sign for everybody, so thank you.
And thank you, Jane. And with that, I'll say welcome new and existing board members to the Oregon Board of Education. Jane, can we have the roll call?
Yes. Mrs. Cabbage.
Present.
Mr. Shea.
yes, present.
Mrs. Molnar. Here. Mr. Savick.
Present.
And Mr. Zadisky.
Present. Can we have a motion to adopt the agenda as written, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Jane, roll call, please.
Yes. Mr. Shea.
Yes.
Mr. Savick.
Yes.
Mrs. Cathers.
Yes.
Mrs. Molnar.
Yes.
And Mr. Zadisky.
Yes. Since I've been appointed the president pro tem of the board, I will be administering the election process. Just a few notes about the process before we get started. We'll begin with the electing of president for the 2022 calendar year, and then we'll move on to the vice president election. Any board member can nominate and subsequently vote for themselves. There's no need to abstain from a vote. Motion for nominations do not require a second, a motion or a second. Nominations don't require a second, so I will not be asking for one. I will ask for nominations, then I will ask a second time, then I'll ask for a motion and second to close nomination, and then ask for a roll call and vote. Election of board officers only require a simple majority vote. In that case, only 3 votes will be needed for election. Upon completion of the election for president and vice president, I will then turn the remainder of the meeting over to the newly elected president. So with that said, with the process of the election for president for 2022 for the Oregon School Board, do we have any motion for nominations?
Yes, Mr. Visky, I'd like to nominate Carol Molnar, please.
We have a motion for Carol Molnar as president. Any other motion for nomination?
Move to close the nominations.
Motion's been made to close. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, motion closed. Can we have a roll call vote, Ms. Cruz?
Sure. Mr. Savick.
Yes.
Mr. Shea.
Yes.
Mr. Zadisky.
Yes.
Mrs. Molnar.
Yes.
And Mrs. Cathers.
Yes.
Congratulations. We'll now move on to the election of vice president for 2022. Do we have a motion for nomination?
I would move to nominate Mr. Zadisky.
Are there any other nominations for vice president? Hearing none, do we have a motion to close the nominations? I will make that motion. Is there a second?
I'm sorry. I can second.
Yeah.
Second.
There's been a second to close nominations. Can we have a roll call?
All right, okay. Let's see, I'll get this right here. Mr. Zavisky,
Yes.
Mrs. Cathers,
Yes.
Mr. Shea,
Yes.
Mrs. Molnar,
Yes.
and Mr. Salvi.
Yes.
All right, that concludes the election of the Oregon Board of Education officer positions for the 2022 calendar year. At this time, I'll turn it over to Ms. Mona for the rest of the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Zavisky. Our next step is to review the board's ethical policy. This is a two-part piece. It's stapled together. The first part has to do with what is unethical, and then the second part has to do with our responsibilities. So, policy BBF. The board believes public education should be conducted in an ethical manner. In addition to state law, the conduct of board members should conform to the code of ethics recommended by the Ohio School Boards Association, which includes the following. It is unethical for a board member to seek special privileges for personal gain, personally assume unauthorized authority, criticize employees publicly, disclose confidential information, place the interest of one individual, group, or community above the interest of the entire district, withhold facts from the superintendent, particularly about the incompetency of an employee, and/or announce future action before a proposition has been discussed by the board. Then let's go to policy BBFE. I'd like each board member to take a turn, starting with Mr. Zavisky. Would you read the first one, and then on down the line, Mrs. Cathers?
Yeah, while serving as a member of the Board of Education, I accept the responsibility to improve publication. To that end, I will remember that my first and greatest concern must be the educational welfare of all the students attending public schools.
I will obey the laws of Ohio and the United States.
Respect the confidentiality of privileged information.
Recognize that as an individual board member, I have no authority to speak or act for the board.
Work with other members to establish effective board policies.
Delegate authority for the administration of the schools to the superintendent and staff.
Encourage ongoing communications among board members, the board, students, staff, and the community.
Render all decisions based on available facts and my independent judgment rather than succumbing to the influence of individuals or special interest groups.
Make efforts to attend all board meetings.
Become informed concerning the issues to be considered at each meeting.
Improve my boardsmanship by studying educational issues and participating in in-service programs.
Support the employment of staff members based on qualifications and not as a result of influence.
Cooperate with other board members and administrators to establish a system of regular and impartial evaluations of all staff.
Avoid conflicts of interest or the appearance thereof.
Refrain from using my board position for benefit of myself, family members, or business associates, and
To express my personal opinions, but once the board has acted, accept the will of the majority.
Thank you, everyone.
Mr. President, in the past, have we signed something on this, or is it just the reading of it at the meetings?
It's just a reading.
Okay.
Okay, item B, we have a resolution for the continuation of the board's service fund for the 2022 fiscal year as appropriated last November and as provided by the Ohio Revised Code, section 3315.15. May I have a motion for that resolution, please?
so moved.
A second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Savick,
Yes.
Mr. Zavisky,
Yes.
Mrs. Cathers,
Yes.
Mr. Shea,
Yes.
and Mrs. Molnar.
Yes. Item C, legal counsel appointment. It is recommended that we continue using the following legal counsel: Spangler and Nathanson, Dinsmore and Stroll, Bricker and Eckler, McGowan and Markling, and Walter Haverfield. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
A second?
So moved. Only question I'll just say, is there any new additions, Jane, or is this the same as what we carried from last year?
This is exactly the same. The question might come because Dinsmore and Shoal is a name change, but it's the same, we always use for our bond, et cetera.
All right, thank you.
And the reason we use so many is because each one has an area of expertise, and that way we get the best of whatever we need. May we have the roll call, please?
Mr. Savick,
Yes.
Mr. Zavisky,
Yes.
Mrs. Cathers,
Yes.
Mr. Shea,
Yes.
and Mrs. Molnar.
Yes. Item D, appointment of standing committees and liaisons. Finance. Mr. Zavisky, would you please be our chair?
Yes.
Mr. Savick, will you be second?
Yes.
Capital improvements. Mr. Shea, would you please be our chair?
Yes.
And I would like to be the second. Policy personnel, I would be the chair. Mrs. Cathers, would you be the second?
Yes.
Academic, Mr. Savick, would you chair?
Yes.
Mrs. Cathers, will you second?
Yes.
Legislative, Mr. Shea.
Yes.
Student achievement, Mr. Savick.
Yes.
And that takes care of that. Time and date for regular meetings. Does the third Tuesday at 6 still work?
Yes.
That works for me.
Works for you? Third Tuesday. Mr. Zavisky, does that still work for you?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so regular meetings will be the third Tuesday at 6 o'clock. Is there any further business? I guess not. We'll move to strategic planning and work session.
Awesome. Congrats to everyone. So at this time, we will stop live streaming, but the meeting's still in session. The plan is to move over here and sit in one of the 8 seats. Doesn't really matter. And we have, I'll kind of explain it once we get up there. We have the ability for Tom and Mary to see everybody. And I have a microphone in case they can't hear us. We'll be able to hear them just fine. I feel confident of that. And then we'll just have them kind of lead us through. We do have some snacks over at the table that we can get up and stretch and go. And do we want to take our picture now or before we start? Mr. Zavisky's saying yes. So if we could go over by the Oregon City Schools background, we'll do our group picture, board picture.
I've got the end.